So you may remember two videos I did called the 5 most punchable book characters, and I made 2 parts of those. But later I made a part about the 5 most huggable book characters. And so today I want to make another part of that. Welcome back to BG's Books. I'm Mr. BG, and today I will be doing part 2 of top 5 most huggable book characters. So, of course, if you have seen my 2 previous videos on the most punchable book characters or the first part of the most huggable characters, go watch those videos if you have not. But if you have seen those, you kind of get the gist by now. I have 5 characters from books that I will show you, and then I will kind of discuss why I want to give them a hug, whether it be I just really like their personality, like they're very loyal or something, or like they've just had a rough life and they just need to be comforted, anything like that. So, yeah, of course, I have 5 books with 5 characters in them, and so let's get right into the list. Bring it in, bring it in. Father Karras from The Exorcist. So, a lot of people kind of overlook Father Karras on The Exorcist, mostly because the movie was more about the possession of Regan and stuff. But in the book, Father Karras was like a major character. I mean, he was in the movie as well, but obviously a lot of the characterization was lost. But anyway, so the thing about Father Karras is that he's kind of having a rough life. When we meet him in the book, his mother had like just passed away of like cancer or something. I don't quite remember what it was. It was a while since I read it. But he's also like kind of doubting his faith a little bit. He's kind of down on his luck, if you will. And so when he gets approached about an exorcism on Regan McNeil, who is the girl that gets possessed, he's kind of doubting it because it's like ever since psychology started to be studied, people just kind of accepted psychological factors more than like actual demon possession and stuff. So basically, a lot of this book is both him grappling with his faith and his realization that maybe this girl does need an exorcist after all. But he also tries to get permission from the church, and then that's their whole deal. And then on top of that, the church is like getting defiled by some like random thing that's like defacing the church and stuff. It's a whole thing. So like Father Karras really goes to the ringer on this one. And then, I mean, some spoilers here, but like at the end, his sacrifice is just kind of very sad because, you know, he didn't have the best life, obviously. But I do think that him sacrificing himself to save Regan from the possession and then ultimately dying was pretty heroic. And so that makes me want to really give him a big ol' hug, you know. So, yeah, at number 5, we have Father Karras from The Exorcist. Bring it in, bring it in. Bob Cratchit from A Christmas Carol. So A Christmas Carol has a lot of characters that you might want to hug a little bit. In fact, I think even Mr. Scrooge himself is a little huggable depending on, you know, the context of the scene and stuff. But he's more of a punchable character and also a huggable character. So he's kind of an honorable mention. But I want to bring up Bob Cratchit because similar to Father Karras, he just kind of goes through the emotional ringer a little bit. It's like he's working a dead-end job for Mr. Scrooge, who, keep in mind, he cares only about money and not for his employees. So Bob Cratchit is very underpaid. He's very overworked. In fact, Mr. Scrooge was surprised when Bob Cratchit asked for Christmas Eve off and Christmas because, you know, that just doesn't happen. Mr. Scrooge doesn't do that. And so not on top of that, Bob Cratchit is just in a very loving family, so that's a positive. But he does not have a lot of finances, so he's very poor. His family is just scraping by, and then to make matters worse, his young son, Tiny Tim, is stricken with a very serious but yet curable disease, but they just do not have the money to afford the treatment. So Bob Cratchit just really kind of has all the bad luck in the world, I guess you could say. And so that just really makes me want to give him a big old hug, you know? Just like reassure him everything will be okay. There are some nice people with the money out there that will help with the situations and stuff. And luckily, Mr. Scrooge just does change by the end. So, but anyway, so yeah, for like most of this book, even though Bob Cratchit isn't like a major character, he's in it maybe like for like a couple pages towards the beginning and towards the end, of course. But like, so even though he isn't in the Christmas Carol a whole bunch, he certainly does have a rough life, and you just kind of want to give him a hug and tell him that life will be better. But yeah, so for that reason, Bob Cratchit from A Christmas Carol is at number 4. Bring it in, bring it in. Paul Sheldon from Misery. So Paul Sheldon, I mean, if you've seen the movie or read the book or both, you know exactly why Paul Sheldon's on this list. He just goes through it all. Like, few Stephen King characters have suffered as much or even more than Paul Sheldon. There are very few characters I can think of that have suffered just as much or even more than him. But anyway, so of course, Paul Sheldon, he didn't really have the strongest family life. He was disconnected from his daughter, so his only claim to fame was really his books and stuff. I think his parents got divorced. He's been divorced a few times. And on top of that, he has a bit of a drinking problem, and that drinking problem led to the catalyst of Misery, which is his car crash in the snow. And then while there, he meets his number one fan, Annie Wilkes, and so, you know, stuff goes from there. But Annie Wilkes just puts him through a lot of torture. Like, she doesn't like his newest book, which is not a Misery book. She doesn't like how he ended the Misery series, so she forces him to destroy his old book and write a new Misery novel that he has no interest in doing. And on top of that, he just goes through a lot of physical and psychological torture. It's like, not to mention just all the injuries and stuff, just the constant verbal and physical abuse that Annie puts him through. He loses his foot in the famous hobbling scene. He loses his thumb in a different hobbling scene that they cut from the movie. It's like, this guy just like is permanently destroyed. And even at the end of the book, when he like gets out and escapes Annie and stuff, he's still like permanently scarred, still has nightmares about Annie, still has just like terrifying dreams about her, like killing him and stuff and getting revenge. So it's like, even though he made it out alive, he is still very much broken. He will never be the same person he was before, and he is just permanently destroyed, but he tries to find some happiness in the end. But yeah, so Paul Sheldon, you really just want to give him a hug for literally everything he went through in Misery. And so for that reason, Paul Sheldon is at number 3. Bring it in, bring it in. Coming in at the number 2 spot is another very famous character that is put through the psychological and physical ringer, and it is in one of the most famous books of all time, including one of my favorite books of all time, and it is, of course, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Bit of a weird choice, I know, but hear me out. So, the main thing that makes Nurse Ratched huggable is that she's just, like, really tearing into these inmates in this asylum, right? And they're just, like, constantly disrespecting her and just, like, undermining her authority. In fact, the greatest thing she does is that she gives Jack Nicholson a lobotomy, which leads to his death. I know. That's pretty cool, because as we all know, Jack Nicholson is a bit of a crazy guy, or at least he plays crazy people. So when he finally got what was coming to him, well, you know how it is. No, I'm just messing with you guys. It's not Nurse Ratched. It's actually Beverly Marsh from It. So yeah, that was a joke, but let's get into discussing why Beverly Marsh deserves to be on this list. So I guess with It, you could really just say any single one of the losers, or even all of them, qualify as huggable characters, because they all have their own stuff going on. In fact, It is just kind of how generational trauma affects people and kind of trying to get over trauma from the past and stuff. But I specifically chose Beverly because I think she just kind of has it the worst of all of them. It's like, yeah, Bill lost his brother because of him, and then Ben was like called not only fat, but also like nearly killed by Henry Bowers and his gang and stuff. The list goes on. But Beverly, I feel the most bad for Beverly because, I mean, throughout her whole life, she's basically just abused by men. It's like, as a child, her father is like very overbearing and is even like sort of perverted and pedophilic towards her, which, you know, does not sound good at all. And not to mention, she also has the bullying problem, like at school and during the summer and stuff with Henry Bowers and his gang. So Beverly just kind of goes through it all. And then as an adult, you know, she gets married to this guy named Tom Rogan, who's also very abusive and just manipulative and stuff. And not to mention, throughout both her childhood and adult years, she's terrorized by a demon clown that has has the urge to eat children. So, you know, there's also that. And then if you want to get the movies involved, she was kidnapped by Pennywise and stared into the deadlights, which caused her to see like their future deaths and stuff. But that's only just in the movies and things. But anyway, so yeah, Beverly just kind of has the worst of it because like domestic abuse and like parental abuse and stuff, that is a very real thing and it's very common, unfortunately, and I don't like it. So it's like you can make a case for any of the losers to be in the most huggable list, but Beverly, I think, is the most huggable because she just goes through it all. She does eventually find a happy ending, though, because she gets remarried to Ben Hanscom. However, she does lose her friends Stan and Eddie, who both pass. And then, of course, at the end of it, the losers all forget everything that ever happened, including their friendships with each other. So Beverly was affected by that as well. But the reason why she isn't number one on this list, even though I highly debated putting her at number one, is because she ultimately gets a somewhat happy ending with some hope at the end. But our number one character has it even worse off than Beverly. But for this reason, Beverly is at the number 2 spot. Bring it in, bring it in. Dolores Hayes from Lolita. So there were a lot of similarities between Dolores Hayes and Beverly Marsh from It. First of all, they are both, I guess, abused by father figures that are pedophilic towards them. But while Beverly somewhat gets sort of a happy ending, that doesn't really stay the same for Dolores Hayes. First of all, she's only 12 years old, and her mother is kind of annoyed by her because, you know, she's very rambunctious and rebellious and stuff, and so her mother's kind of annoyed with her. And then, of course, her stepfather, Mr. Humbert, the main character of Lolita, he marries her mother only so he can be close to her because he just really wants to get with her for some reason, for other reasons that we've already discussed in other videos about Humbert and Lolita. But anyway, so because of Humbert's obsession with Dolores Hayes, her mother actually runs outside and is hit by a car. So she dies, but Dolores thinks that her mother's in the hospital because that's what Humbert says. So Humbert kind of takes her from camp, and then they just go on a road trip across the U.S. for like 2 years or whatever. And then every time she like meets a boy that she likes, Humbert gets jealous because, you know, Dolores is only his. Also, she has many nicknames. Dolores Hayes is a real name. Lolita is what Humbert calls her. She's sometimes called Lo for short. And she's also called Dolly in the end by her husband. But anyway, so yeah, Dolores Hayes' life is just really filled with being controlled by this really perverted man that wants to be with her. And constantly, like, she's not even a real character almost. It's like she's kind of like a stereotype, if you will. I don't really know how to word it. But basically, she's not like a full character. She doesn't have an arc or anything. All she really does is she's just kind of a plot device for Humbert to enact his ways on. And I do believe that was intentional by Nabokov. But anyway, and then fast forward, Dolores gets very sick at some point, so Humbert takes her to the hospital. But when he goes to get her, one of the next days, she has been kidnapped again by this man named Claire Quilty. And then, so years go by, she has a husband now named Richard. But unfortunately, her story comes to an end where she dies in childbirth on Christmas Day. So, yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of overlaps between Dolores Hayes and Beverly Marsh from It. But while Beverly gets somewhat of a happy ending, Dolores Hayes is just met with constant misery and abuse and not even full characterization. And then her story ends even sadder by having her die in childbirth, which is just part of the, you know, just one of the worst things ever. So anyway, so yeah, Dolores Hayes just really has no redeeming parts of her life. Her real father's out of her life. Her mother doesn't really like her that much. Her stepfather's just pedophilic, and then she gets kidnapped and abused and exploited, and then eventually dies, which is just very sad. And so for that reason, I think that Dolores Hayes is very huggable, and so much so that she deserves to be at the number 1 spot on this list. But that is it for the list, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my video on the most huggable book characters, part 2. I am considering a part 3, but it's kind of hard to come up with huggable characters. It's also hard for me to come up with a part 3 of most punchable characters as well, even though I am considering doing both, and if I do come up with good choices for those, I will make those as well. But anyway, so yeah, do let me know what you guys think about this video. Let me know what you think about my picks, as well as drop your picks in the comments below. I would love to see your picks for the most huggable characters that you have in books. But yeah, anyway, that is it from me. Oh yeah, we hit 400 subscribers. Hooray! Yeah, 400 subscribers. That's so great. You guys are so incredible. You guys are so amazing. I love all of you guys so much. But yeah, anyway, with that said, this is the end of the video. I've been Mr. BG. This has been BG's Books, and I will see you guys in the next video.